Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Big Fish from 2003. And this was the winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this movie was chosen by Jordan Bouchard. This is an interesting movie, I think, in the filmography of Tim Burton, because it is sort of right after most people were sick of him. I think it's right after his considered good period is over, and before the CG sludge we would get from him with Johnny Depp and stupid hats and stuff. But I think, and this film feels very reserved for him, considering the time period. It almost feels like he's not being as kooky as he could be, and when he is being kooky and weird, it's like on purpose with the framework of the film. It doesn't feel like it's all the time like it usually is. Now, a part of that is because the film was about sort of his dad who's recently passed away, and how much of this film is about like the idea of storytelling and how much can you really know someone else, and even if it is your dad, specifically your dad, obviously, because it's about a father and a son. But it's this film is very odd in its filmography because it makes like no sense in terms of timing. But I also think he gets what this film needs. It feels like his auteurness does not overpower the material, and this feels less like Tim Burton's Big Fish. The idea of Big Fish is the idea, not the idea that Tim Burton directed it. In fact, like, I don't know if this is probably one of the few of his films where understand if you went, who directed this? Like, it's that different for him. But I think a lot of it, this film has changed for me, because I saw this, I didn't see this when it came out, although people told me it was good, even though I was sort of like, Planet of the Apes really pissed me off at the time, even though I didn't see it. I don't know, I was a teenager. So I didn't see this. I did see it later, and I was like, wow, this is really good. At that time, I didn't have kids. I wasn't a dad. And now I am a father. And so my relationship to this movie and how I view this movie has very much changed. And how you view your dad and your relationship with your father and his bullshit and your bullshit before and after are, trust me on this, remarkably different. But what this film is about is Billy Crudup is playing a journalist who him and his wife Marion Cotillard, who's expecting to find out that his father is dying. They come back to his southern town to see his father, played by Albert Finney, and his mother, played by Jessica Lange. And his father keeps telling tall tales and stories about what happened as his sort of life stories, for all these fantastical stories and stuff like that. Ewan McGregor plays the younger version of him in this sort of like idealized fantasy world, or so we're led to believe. This film plays as you do not have children, basically. I mean, the character Billy Crudup does not have a kid yet. He has all that like anticipation and like my kids, I'm going to tell him the truth. He's going to know who I really am, and like all this like real highfalutin stuff, I know, like, before you have kids, everybody's got these like real grand ideas. It's all very cute because you get lots of sleep and stuff. You have lots of time to like think about things, but trust me, you won't, and you'll just be like, whatever. It happens to everybody, don't worry about it. But I think you sort of realize between when you are someone's son and then you become someone's father, you're usually both for a certain amount of time, but that's not my point. You kind of learn that there's certain things about your personality before you had kids, or when you're not around your kids, that they will never fully grasp, even in adulthood. I don't know if I ever understand like what, even though I went to my dad's workplace and stuff, how he acts on your average workday, or like how my job and his are very different, and like what, our attitudes to certain things. Some of it is time. Some of it is just they don't tell you all of it. Some of it is like you don't really need to fucking know. But at the same time, you will never really know everything about your parents. And there's a certain amount of mystery there regardless of if you had it all explained to you. I think there's certain things your parents just, maybe don't tell you, and sometimes just because they're tired and they don't want to get into it. Sometimes, yes, it is because they're maybe hiding something, but that's a different relationship. I do think this gets into that quite frequently. And it's like, did Billy Crudup's character know Albert Finney's character? Ultimately, like, did he know his dad? And he was telling these stories and he never found out who he really was, because he's like a journalist, which I think is a nice touch for this. Like, he's trying to find the truth. He's a journalist. I get it. And that's very very literal, the almost like the difference between the baby boomers and the Gen X, because I think Billy Crudup's like Gen X or whatever. And the whole idea of generations, and like one generation wants to be fantastical and like myth making, all this, and the other generation wants to be realistic and tell honest, the idea of honesty and all those things. But I think there is a sense of who he is ultimately, because who he is those tall tales. That is his personality. And as we see throughout the film, they are based in reality. But the thing about stories, and any story that has been told so many times over the years, at a certain point, you tell the same stupid story at family gatherings because people love hearing that stupid story. And it morphs, and it changes, and you think of a new detail. You're like, oh yeah, didn't that happen? Did it really? Did you remember it weird? Who the fuck knows? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't in the end. But part of that is their personality. Part of it is them. But I think what this film is wrestling with that idea, because I think when you become a father, and I'm sorry I'm being very gendered, but this is kind of like this whole movie's thing. So but I think when you become a father or a parent, you do sort of like look back on a lot of decisions, be like, I think that was a better decision than I realized. Something that you thought was bullshit, something that you're like, well, I didn't really know them. They didn't really understand certain things. They didn't fully want to tell me those things. But part of that is who they are. How someone tells you something and doesn't tell you something is ultimately who they are. But Billy Crudup doesn't know that yet. And he's sort of angry that like this is all there is, and also I think this film sort of downplays waiting for a kid definitely messes with your head. I do think the anxiety and the anticipation of all of it is pretty insane, especially the first time. You're just going through a lot of emotions, which this film sort of subtly plays with, but there's nothing subtle about that time. It does that very well, and the idea of messing with the interpretation of the truth or universal truth, and all that is very much at play in this, which I like that Tim Burton, as a director who's known for the fantastical and stuff, is able to play with that. I also like Ewan McGregor's performance a lot. Because him and Albert Finney, he was cast because of the film in the 60s, Tom Jones, and other kind of his, I guess he came out of the Angry Young Man, or English kind of Saturday night, Sunday morning thing, but then did kind of Tom Jones as the Great Trickster and stuff like that. And I think that works so well with who he is as his persona as an actor, and I quite like that. If you know the Tom Jones stuff, it works really well. But I also think Ewan McGregor, who's not really fully playing a caricature, I really got to give it to Ewan McGregor in this film, because I think you could go, oh well, he's not really playing a guy, he's playing the version of a guy, or the guy's imagined version of himself, but he never I want to watch him. It's sort of an interesting star-making role. I really like watching Ewan McGregor, but he's he feels sort of real. It feels like he's dispelling his own myth, but also playing into it at the same time. It's a very interesting performance. I think he's really smart. I like Billy Crudup. I feel like he's very he's probably better now that he plays it. He's like The Morning Show isn't a great show, but he's pretty good on it, and I think he's better when he's doing stuff like that. And this, where he's being very literal and down to earth, is I remember liking him a lot more. And maybe he's better in things like Almost Famous and stuff. But he almost I get that the point, someone has to play that role and that has to work, and he does it very well. It's just not my favorite performance from him. and everybody from like Danny DeVito to like the Giant, who I remember getting a lot of press at the time actually. And I think this film, like, if you came out in the end of 2003, Return of the King came out, so like good luck to all y'all, but like, whoa. It's like I've never seen the end of the year get steamrolled so quickly. Because I remember there was a bunch of end of 2003 movies that I caught up with later, because we were all just like, Return of the King, it's awesome, Lord of the Rings is awesome kind of stuff. So apologies to Big Fish. I do really like that Tim Burton made this film, and I think it is probably one of the period of his in the 80s and 90s. I rewatched a lot as a kid because there was a lot to watch, all of those, and I really love those movies, and I like revisiting them. This is sort of reminds me of the things I like about his later filmography, is like this and like Frankenweenie, I'd say, are the two, and they both like do weird things with his auteur voice. This is probably the most reserved he's been since Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the most less Tim Burton he is. But it's like you almost like you don't think of Tim Burton as much as a storyteller as you do in this film, because I mean that's all the film's fucking about. So how could you not? I really do like this film, and I like the idea of understanding sort of your dad's bullshit and understanding that that's who he is, good or bad, and you kind of have to come to terms with it. And maybe, you know, I think a lot of people look at their parents as sort of a puzzle, and I think the older you get, the more you realize you will never fully solve that puzzle. You just kind of have to walk away from it and go, I think I've done enough. I feel like they gave me the answers and the tools. Even if they didn't, that's where I am. And, you know, that mileage may vary for you, but that's what I think this film is. It's like, you know, Tim Burton had lost his father a little bit before that. He wanted to work through those issues with Big Fish. And I think he did because, I mean, I don't know, I'm not his therapist, but it felt like he did, because you end the film kind of realizing that you do sort of accept it, and maybe some of it's true. Maybe he was that guy in the end. But also in the end, like, does it matter if he was or wasn't? Like, what if he had done his journalistic thing and found out the truth of every story? Would that have changed who he was? Would that have changed the reality of it? And I think in the end, it's like, yeah, he had a cool life and he's proud of it. And there's a lot of older guys who want to tell you stories and they're really happy and they think they did it right. Sometimes that can be obnoxious. Sometimes that can be annoying. Sometimes you're like, I don't think that's even true, but okay. You just gotta let it go. You just gotta go, that's who they are, ultimately. And I think Tim Burton is more known for myth making and the children's chorus and the fantastical. For someone to go like, that's just sort of what it is, kid. And that's what you gotta deal with. And you gotta walk away and you gotta just look at it and go, that's ultimately, that is my dad. And whether I'm happy or sad or felt like it wasn't honestly who he was, that is honestly your relationship with him. And you can figure it out how you must. And seeing it done through fantastical stories and, you know, go through, you know, everything from, you know, the weird hand tool, which is actually kind of neat. I don't know if they ever sold those. Or him going into the strange town, or in the forest, or going to the city, or making this amazing house, or like going through enemy lines and he's almost dead and all this stuff. It all leads to a picture of a guy. He didn't have a girl in every port. All the mystery, like the mythos, maybe wasn't what you think it is, but that's who he was. And maybe you'll never believe everyone's stories about him. Maybe what you really think is what you think is the truth. But you gotta sort of let him go and realize sort of that's who he is and that's who he's gonna be. And you just sort of walk away and go, yeah, okay. I think I'm happy for what we had, and I should really just appreciate your dad for that. So if you have seen Big Fish and would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And this was a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching.